Friday, September 18th. It is time for our daily briefing. We're visiting with the mayor here today on KLAM and KCDV. Also, those of you, of course, who join us on YouTube to follow this information that way, youtube.com/Cordova TV, where these updates get posted as soon as we can get them up there. Good news on our box score again, as we see zeros where we want to see zeros. And so we'll kind of be celebrating here a little bit today. The mayor actually has a meeting with the governor's office that will talk about why that's taking place. And then also go over this, I call it economic stimulus plan. I'm sure there's a different official name for it, but this system that the city has found to get some of this federal funding into the hands of individual households to not only ease some of their financial burden, but also stimulate our local economy directly. So stick around and learn about that here on the Daily Briefing for the 18th on KLAM and KCDV. Mayor Koplin, again, it's been a while, which is due largely to all those zeros I see on our dashboard. I assume you're pretty happy about our case count situation?
I am. It's always a lift to get back to zero active cases, and a great way to wrap up the week.
Yeah, well, and in terms of the response overall, we've got more activity at the schools, more activity at some of the city facilities. We were talking with the city manager about that yesterday. I mean, it has to have been felt like a step forward to see people at a council meeting again.
It really was, and especially appreciated Barb Jewell's school board report, just that the great feedback they've had from parents, students, teachers, staff on how much thought and care went into making a safe environment, and appears to be working. And across the board, again, just the continued work of our fantastic ambassadors out at the airport, our medical team constantly measuring and monitoring and tweaking and keeping the word out, and working on constant improvements to our hospital facilities, and a lot of work behind the scenes. It is still working very well, so it's very gratifying, and it's a great team effort.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the success of it, again, is on the dashboard. I mean, we can't make the mistake of thinking that zero presence of cases on the dashboard means that there is no virus in Cordova. We still have to be careful, but with it also we've got to be able to be happy about successes. And on that line, actually, a question I very often ask you when we visit is, have you had any meetings with state or federal officials? And it turns out, as we're recording this on Friday the 18th, you have a meeting actually coming up with the governor's office. How did that come about?
Exactly. Well, and I know it's hard to see all the moving pieces in a fast-moving pandemic like this, but earlier in the summer, we sent Cop River King salmon to our congressional delegation, President Trump and the governor, thanking them for their direct support for Cordova and our Prince William Sound fisheries. They were having problems with meatpacking plants in lower 48 at the time. Senator Sullivan talks directly with President Trump frequently, and it was emphasized the importance of conducting a fishing season economically and for food for the country, and the importance of having the resources in place to do that safely for our communities. And so, President Trump directly sent Dr. Alexander Eastman to Cordova, the Chief Medical Officer for the Center for Disease Control. Governor Dunleavy, also advocating for the fisheries, sent Dr. Zink and Heidi from Health and Human Services, and they came and met with our medical staff, made sure that me and our medical team had them on speed dial and were available 24/7. They check in frequently. We've had the governor's chief of staff and special assistants and commissioners visit Cordova, the commissioner of Fish and Game, and most importantly, making sure that we had a strong supply of testing kits guidance and flexibility to put our own provisions in place if we needed to. It's just been a fantastic collaboration. And like you said, we see zeros on our dashboard, and at the state level, we still have the lowest per capita, incidence of challenges. So, you can spin what you want, but the outcomes are what you look at, and Alaska's in a good place. And so the governor's office reached out to several of the communities, fishing communities, who have really worked collaboratively with them to execute a good, safe fishing season and make sure that we could keep our businesses open and working and our fishermen fishing. And Cordova was one of those, and I think that went out in an Alaska Daily News article. But then they kind of wanted to follow back specifically to Cordova, who has probably worked with earliest and closest. And frankly, a lot of the things that our incident team and medical team were implementing in Cordova, the state borrowed for other communities. And in fact, they had asked me to reach out to other communities at certain times and talk to their mayors and councils, even as Dr. Zink has called in during our council meetings to help advise our city council. So it's been a good cooperative working relationship, and we'll have an a Zoom interview with the governor's press corps here at 1:30 in the afternoon. And I want Cordova to understand that this is just acknowledging the great working relationship and support we've had from our state and national leadership, and it's specifically pandemic related.
Yeah, well, and of course it's challenging. I know, for example, thinking about the governor and frustrations folks might have with how the Marine Highway has been handled, and to just view everything that he does through that lens. When in a position like yours or like the city council or something, there's you have to do what really all of us, I think anyway, ought to do, and be able to look at different issues on their own merit. So Marine Highway, maybe a bad situation, maybe some more debate to be had there, but the COVID response is a different deal. And so to be able to look at these individual things on their own merit.
Exactly. And, there's always, as often the case, there's so many great stories kind of back behind the Associated Press and the narrow focus there. Just President Trump's salmon, for example, he told Senator Sullivan, he says, look, there's a lot of people struggling through this pandemic. Why don't you find a group in Alaska that can really use this salmon? So it ended up going to kind of a non-denominational gospel rescue mission where they have they feed, serve meals and so forth. And I thought, how great is it that during the pandemic, when people are struggling financially, that people get to eat fresh Copper River King salmon at a food bank. Yeah. And it's just it's great for people to have that opportunity, but it's a great story behind there to see that this really is from top to bottom a national effort to protect lives and livelihoods. And I think it's a great story. Yeah.
Well, speaking of interesting, and it's ironic, here again now to go back into comparing, say at the federal level, how they can't seem to come to any consensus about another round of economic stimulus. Cordova is free of that problem in that our city council and whoever other bodies are involved have a very interesting stimulus plan about to roll out that I first learned about from Helen Howarth yesterday. So what is this idea of getting some of the CARES money into the hands of our households and circulating into the economy?
Well, I think it's fantastic, and want to give City Manager Howard the credit for the idea and the pretty substantial footwork that went into making sure that it was legal, allowed, and then structuring it to best benefit Cordova citizens and businesses. And you may have remembered early on we had kind of an appreciation program where we had $5 coupons, just positive reinforcement for anybody wearing a mask, and you could spend those in Cordova businesses, just recognizing that our businesses are really struggling. So now there'll be kind of like a gift card, charge card available. We'll have to apply for them. But head of households, $500, life partner, $500, and then $300 for dependents. And those cards will be for Cordova business purchases. So it'll keep the money in town, help people that are struggling to make ends meet with their necessities and bills even, and also help the Cordova businesses who are struggling now, and it's not going to get better as we go into winter after a tough summer season. So unfortunately, all the work that went into having a safe salmon season and executing the fishery successfully, we had to pour salmon on, and so that's just kind of another layer of challenge. So I think it's a great way of the federal and state and city governments having access to some resources and saying, maybe the best way to spend this is not for the government to kind of guess what's most important, but put it in our citizens' hands so they can help themselves in the way that's most meaningful to them. So a great program.
Yeah, well, and Helen said yesterday the total infusion into the economy will be about, it's roughly $1 million, isn't it?
Yeah, $1 million. So it may not go as far as you'd like, but it's very meaningful.
Well, but I mean, the thing is that we've always had these multipliers, and I'm sure it changes over time. The last one I remember was 7, the average number of times that a local dollar will change hands before maybe ending up leaving the community in some fashion through an out of community spending. But so you think about $1 million passing 7 times, it generates essentially $7 million in economic activity as it floats around. I mean, it's really hard to not see that as a great big win. And so a tip of the hat to whoever came up with that idea. It just seems like there's no downside.
Exactly. Again, that's our city manager, so I want to give credit where credit's due.
Sure. Well, and again, just we have to be conscious of the continued risks and the continued need for mitigation efforts, but we've also got to celebrate from time to time, and Friday's a great day to do that. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, just want to wish everybody a safe, happy weekend, and continue to be vigilant and recognize that it's working, and that's a wrap.
All right. Sounds good to me. Well, you have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
And that will wrap up our visit with the mayor here on the Daily Briefing for September 18th. Glad you could tune in. Again, we will be very proactive. That's the word. Be very proactive in letting you know about this economic infusion, the stimulus plan, whatever you want to call it, these CARES Act funds that are going to be distributed to households. I'm sure we'll be visiting with the city manager and mayor about that as it starts to fall into place with those applications. We don't want anybody to miss out. And, of course, a really good asset continues to be covid19.cityofcordova.net. If you want to know about anything having to do with Cordova's response, 424-INFO to talk to somebody, 424-WELL to listen to the pre-recorded information that the Village of EAC puts out, and our daily briefings at 1, 5, and 8 p.m. on the radio and archived at youtube.com/Cordova TV. We hope you have a great and safe weekend from 6 feet apart. And we'll get you back to regular programming now on the Clam and the Eagle.